Good day, and welcome to another one of our Ransford's Weekly Wraps. I am Viv Govender. This week, we are going to look at a really good week in many ways for Trump, and the impact it's having on the global economy. Then we're going to look at the resolution of the Israel, Pakistan, crisis to a certain extent. And finally, in the general market segment, we're going to look at a possible change in how we target inflation and what could mean for the South African economy going forward. And in our AI tech segment, we are going to focus on a new model from Google called AlphaEvolve and what it might mean for, AI development going forward. Okay, let's start off with the good week for Trump. So last week we discussed Trump's deal with the UK. Now he's got a deal going with the Chinese as well. Similar to the UK, there's a base tariff in place, I think this is going to be the theme going forward. So he's going to get down to effectively a base tariff with regards to, most countries out there, which would translate, given the size of the US economy and how much it imports, into a pretty substantial revenue stream for the country. We're talking, hundreds of billions maybe a year in terms of revenue. And like I said to you before, if you can translate those hundreds of billions directly into a tax cut for the lower income earners in the country, and I'm talking about people making the medium income and below, the average person in the country effectively, it would probably result in a huge political win for him, or his party at least. Remember, he can't technically run again, though there's, rumors about that as well. But yeah, it's really worked out well for him. He's also come out and put forward a plan to basically adjust how the US pays for pharmaceutical drugs. So basically what he says is that, or what he's basically had an executive order saying is that if a company charges a certain amount of for any particular drug anywhere in the world, they cannot charge more than that in the US. Now, for those that don't know, the US is responsible for the majority of pharmaceutical revenue in the world. So a drug that might cost a certain amount in the US might cost maybe a quarter, maybe even less than that in other parts of the world. I'm not just talking about places like, in Africa that are poor or in Asia. I'm talking places like Europe. The Americans basically pay the majority of the, drug companies' revenue globally. And they're only about 5%, a little under 5% of the global population. And, even a place like Europe, is a large population, it's a wealthy area, they basically pay significantly less than what the Americans do, because of this kind of discriminatory pricing that they are able to do, where they can charge a lot in the US and basically then give a significant discount elsewhere in the world. If this executive order is upheld, and even if it doesn't become upheld as an executive order, there is actual support, even among Democrats, to support this particular amendment or this particular law change in the Congress. So let's just say somehow Eli Lilly and those companies go out there, they challenge this executive order, they will basically have a law in place, probably, that's going to make that effectively a law, which is much more difficult to challenge down the line. So the executive order in place right now, but probably going to be backed up by a law. I think, politically, that's going to be a huge win for the US. There's one of the big, points in which the US, the Democrats in the US are able to basically, campaign on is basically medical costs. And a lot of medical costs are, drug costs. The difference in terms of like pricing for things like insulin, for EpiPens, for a bunch of different really essential items in the US versus elsewhere in the world is substantial. What might cost a few tens of dollars in like Europe or in Africa, like in South Africa even, will cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in the US. So this would be a huge political win for Trump as well. And finally, he was also involved in the resolution of the Pakistan towards India conflict, or recent conflict. So he's the one that announced the ceasefire. Apparently, Pakistan went to the US to ask them to basically push India for a ceasefire. They did, and India basically agreed. And we've had effectively a cessation of violence at the moment anyway. Again, positive for him in giving him a huge amount of international credibility globally. The fact that he's able to push the ceasefire, the fact that he's able to pressure India, the fact that he's basically resulted in US dominance globally. At the same time, we are seeing a deal being made by Trump as well for apparently a $500 billion investment by the Saudis in the US, which was huge amounts of purchases from Boeing. One reason is Boeing up so dramatically in the last month or so has been a lot of government support in terms of pushing international buyers of Boeing aircraft, etc. Again, another win for Trump. So it's been a very positive week for the Trump administration. We've seen the US dollar strengthen on this news, especially around what's happened with the China deal. And the gold price has come down as well, again indicating that some of the uncertainty in the world has, to a certain extent, gone away. All positive. Speaking of the India-Pakistan deal, there is a cessation of violence. So basically, we've not had any more rocket firing after the ceasefire, with a few exceptions, but basically, it seems to have come to an end. What was the overall, result? Pakistan probably did better than they was assumed to do in advance. They probably destroyed a couple Indian Rafale jets, which was their air systems. They did, however, suffer damage on some of their, airports and military airports, some of their facilities. The Indians were attacking far, far deeper into Pakistan than they were willing to go in the past. Possibly even, attacking near or even on the grounds of the nuclear facilities, which is, obviously a huge sticking point for Pakistan. And this just indicates that we are seeing an escalating, round of violence each time there's a flare between the two countries. Every time there's an additional kind of a terrorist attack that India blames on Pakistan, or we are seeing India going further and further in terms of the attacks. And that, I think, is obviously troubling. But even more troubling is that we still have not fully resolved the water issue. And I think Pakistan is probably going to be really, really reluctant to basically concede much on this. If they do, it makes them very vulnerable to future, attacks. Like I said in previous talks, a lot of the agriculture, even some of the power generation, depends on the water from India. And even if it's not, a case where the Indians use up the water, but just maybe divert it for certain time periods, etc., and have an infrequent flow, even though the same amount of water may eventually go across, it would be very, very disruptive to Pakistan's economy, and maybe something that they might be not willing to compromise on. That is, I think, a further issue that we have to consider going online. This is a case where, yes, this particular episode seems to be resolved, but it will not be the last. And trends continue the next time around, we will see an even greater, amount of escalation, let me say, coming through. Now, moving on to the big story that we talked about before, which is basically the possible revamping of our inflation target for South Africa. The Reserve Bank has been trying to lower our inflation target consistently. So there was a 3 to 6% target. In recent years, they've been talking more about a 4.5%, in one point a 3-6% target. Anchoring the expectations, and now moving it possibly down to 3%. The pain of this would be substantial if, in the short term at least, because it would mean that if we saw inflation at 4.5% and your target is 3%, you've got to raise interest rates. Previously, when it's 4.5%, when it was a 3 to 6% range, or even when it was a 4.5% target, you're fine. You won't raise interest rates. You'd basically let the market kind of go as it is. When it was a 3-6% level, and it went to 5.5%, you would be okay with having interest rates remain constant, even if it was 5.5%, because it's still within your 3 to 6% range. So pushing it at 3% is going to cause the central bank, Reserve Bank of South Africa, to act in conditions that in the past you would not have acted for. So for a 4% or 4.5% interest rate, it would not have acted before. Now it would act by what? Increasing interest rates. So it would be a significant amount of pain and risk, I would think, in the short term. But why would the South African government want to do this? Well, if you're able to get inflation down to 3% and hold it there and have the market believe it's at 3%, guess what happens? The interest you pay goes down, because now you're getting a real return based on 3% versus 4.5%, or even a range of 3 to 6, which might even be 6. So in the past, where maybe if it was 3 to 6, and you're looking at, say, most of the time it's between 5 and 6, you'd want like a 7-8% interest rate to basically justify lending. If it's down 4.5%, you may be willing to go take away 5% interest rate. If it's a 3, you'll be willing to take a 4% interest rate. and each percentage point in interest paid in South Africa is roughly about $3.5 billion, sorry, per year on interest payments. So if you can lower it from basically, say, 4.5 to basically 3, we're talking about close to $5 billion a year in interest payments. That's effectively like almost 100 billion rands in interest payments a year that we would save, based on nothing more than just effectively having the inflation target be 3% versus 4.5%. 100 billion rands is a lot of money, that is more than was looking to be raised by that VAT hike that they were discussing, just a few months ago. So if they're able to pull this off, a 3% interest rate versus a 4.5% interest rate, so a 3% inflation rate target versus a 4.5% inflation rate target, that 1.5%, like I said, it's 100 billion rands or close to it per year in interest payments, which buy us nothing. You know what I mean? There's no benefit that we get from the 100 billion that you gave to that interest rate payment. It's just lost money. So if they're able to pull this off, very, very good, work on behalf of the Reserve Bank. Very, very strong, indicator of the positive stability of South Africa. We may not be the fastest growing economy in the world, but in terms of like the financial stability in South Africa, it's been, up there among the best, not even just among the emerging markets, but among even like some of the developed markets out there. We have been really, really successful in terms of maintaining the stability of the rand, in terms of maintaining the stability of our, price increases, etc. And the fact that we can get down, or possibly even getting down to 3% with places like Turkey, would love to get to the 3 to 6% range, or even to 6%, quite frankly, just shows how what a good job the Reserve Bank has done over the last several years. It's just basically a payoff for the good work that they've done over the last multiple decades. And then let's moving on to the this from Google. Now, I've talked about Google / Alphabet, which Google's parent company, but let's just say Google because we all know, this is Google. How Google basically has had an edge when it comes to the science behind AI. In fact, the AI technology that we, are using now, the people that won the Nobel Prize for that are Google employees. You know what I mean? Jeffrey Hinton, Dennis Sebas, these are Google employees. They basically, are part of Google's workforce. This is where all the science or more of the development for AI has come from. Even though like OpenAI has released the best models, or at least in public perception has the best models out there, and definitely has the market share in terms of perception and usage as well. Google's models are excellent, and the stuff that they're able to do beyond the models is unrivaled. Nobody's close. People are very close to them on the LLMs. They are not close to them on things like AlphaEvolve. What AlphaEvolve is this new model from Google, a new development from Google, that effectively allows the AI to find better algorithms to solve mathematical problems. Now you may ask yourself, well, what's the big deal about this? This is like real science. This is like significant science. A better algorithm is like a key that humanity can use to unlock untold riches. You know what I mean? If you have a better algorithm to do something, that algorithm can be used anywhere, anytime. For whenever you get that problem, coming up, and that would be hugely, hugely beneficial. This is real science. This is not just regurgitating some poetry or making a picture or something. This is something that's going to have real impact on the global economy. And to give an idea how successful this AlphaEvolve has been, they apparently used about over 50 open problems. That means these are problems that maths hasn't fully solved as yet. So there's some solutions to them, but they're not the ultimate solution. So over 50 of these open problems. In 75% of the time of these cases, but 3/4 of the time, the model rediscovered the best model. So they couldn't improve on what we did. But in 20% of the time, they discovered something that's better than what we currently know. And anywhere these algorithms are used, be it whatever for some kind of optimization or some kind of scientific discovery or whatever, now we have these new models that are better than the old models and will give us this advantage in terms of efficiencies, etc., going forward. And this is just the start. Obviously, this is the worst these models are ever going to be, and we are going to see over time getting better and better. But we already are seeing, an improvement coming through with regards to algorithms due to the AlphaEvolve program. And I do think that as the stuff gets refined, as it gets improved upon, we are going to not just see global improvements in terms of these algorithms. We are likely to see these algorithms turning inward on themselves. One of the things you can do with an algorithm is basically make a better AI algorithm. Think about it. If you're using, AI is basically the big discoveries. They are algorithmic. If you can find better algorithms, better mathematical solutions, you can use the mathematical solutions in your AI model and then make that AI model better, and then that's going to be a self-improving, cycle. The better the model is, the better the algorithms it creates. The better the algorithms it creates, the better models you can make using those new algorithms. Okay, the better programs you can write based on these better algorithms. The better, business decisions you can make. Environmental programming, planning decisions, because now you have a better way of optimizing things. And this is, I think, a huge advantage that we must not ignore when it comes to the what is happening right now at Google. They are losing the race when it comes to public perception. They are possibly losing the race, when it comes to basically protecting their search, business, which is still, more than half of their revenue. But at the same time, the stuff that they have behind the scenes, stuff like Waymo, stuff like this AlphaEvolve, stuff like AlphaFold, which is basically their, protein folding algorithm or program, stuff like, GNOME, etc. The stuff that they're doing around that is being gangbusters, and it's quite possible that we could see, with more confident or aggressive leadership, Google, Alphabet, really taking the lead in the AI space, not just in reality, and like we are and seeing in the actual results they're producing, but also in the public perception. Especially if they're able to adjust or adapt or push through AI onto their user base, which is one of the largest user bases in the world. People that have Gmail accounts, people that have, use YouTube, people that basically, have used Google. This is a huge data user base. And if you were able to put AI first into that user base, you would see a huge, uptick in public usage of AI, as well as public perception about Google's AI product. And I do think that, unfortunately, someone like Sundar Pichai can't do that because he's not the founder. He doesn't have the ability to go out and just say to the Google probably, I know we make more than half our money from this particular, search bar, the Google search bar, but we're going to sacrifice that for this future growth that we're seeing in AI and self-driving and a whole bunch of other things. That being said, both Larry Page and Sergey Brin are really interested in new AI stuff. And Sergey Brin, who was kind of like the second fiddle to Larry Page in the first round in the past when they were running the company together, is really, really pushed forward and gone back very strongly to Google. I bet Larry Page has some health issues that are holding him back, and I think Sergey Brin also has some fears around Parkinson's. But the fact of the matter is that we are seeing one of the founders back in a big way at Alphabet, Google, and possibly maybe taking some of the authority away from Sundar Pichai, but also possibly being able to push through aggressive policies, such as, for instance, moving away from search more towards AI, and even sacrificing search in many ways to service AI, which would be, I think, really positive in the longer term for that company. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to joining you next week. Cheers.